Hey Danielle, I figured I could just show you this way as well to at least give you an idea. So I am logging in here, which I gave you the credentials for before. So I'm going to give you a quick rundown on what this all looks like. So if you want to see the raw data, you go up in the corner. You can bring this out right down here by collapsing and unccollapsing it, and I went to discover. And so this shows you all of the data in its raw form. So like you can see this field is the time that the data point was collected. And if you click on that, excuse me, you can actually see what the raw data was. So this is a unique ID that I generate. It doesn't really mean much, except that it pulls in, it's the trip ID plus the date plus the stop ID, I believe. These don't really matter. This is the lat and long of the bus when this was pulled. Route color, it's some data that's provided. It's not really important. I assume this is probably the hex code for silver. Route ID. The route ID, I will actually show a little bit more about that here shortly. Because I forget, because there's the trip ID down here, and then there's the route ID up here. And I believe the route ID is, so like for this is the CityLink Silver going in a certain direction. So I believe that this is going to be repeated multiple times a day, but I will show you how we can figure that out. And I believe the trip ID is unique per day, but for example, would be repeated Monday through Friday for a 6:30 Silver Line route. We can see this is the direction it's going. So that's not the same as the head sign. That's just where it's coming from and everything. The short name, which that would be like CityLink Silver, CityLink Navy, 63, 65, that kind of stuff. I don't know what that's for. It's also just provided. Route type, for 3, that is canceled, I believe. Yeah, that's a canceled route. So that the route type is either going to be 3 or 0. It's 3 being canceled, 0 being scheduled. I'm sorry, that's the schedule relationship. Schedule relationship is 3 or 0. Route type, I'm actually not sure what that is. Shape distance traveled, that's the distance that has gone so far in its route. So, for example, this is stop sequence 50. So it's gone 50 stops from, this is Silver going to Hopkins, so coming from Curtis Bay. So it's by this stop, or where it is right now, it's about to come up to stop 50. It will have traveled 15 miles. Granted, this is a canceled one, but they all look the same, basically. And yeah, so let me show you a bit about how to kind of play with data before doing visualization. So if we go up here to add filter, we can kind of look a little bit further into the data. So like when I was trying to figure out this route ID, one way to do it is just click filter for data or filter out data. But I'm going to take this number, oops, if I can select it, and I'm going to do add filter, and I'm going to do route ID, and then I can do is not, is one of. So like if I want to search multiple Silver Line routes, I can do is one of, like what do we have? 1177, and then like 11743 or something like that, and I could search for all these things. I don't actually know if 11743 is a Silver Line one anyway. Is between, so like when I do some searches, I care about which weekday it is, so I'll do is between 1 and 5. If it exists, if it doesn't exist, yeah, so we're going to do route ID is 11744. So this was from a Saturday. So right now I'm just looking at the last 15 minutes. So if I want to, because we have data going back the last 6 months, but let's just look at the last 30 days, and we can see that that there is data from basically every day. So we can see that each one of these bars is per 12 hours. So there are 5,397 results, where each result is generally a stop. So based on that, I can guess that route ID is run multiple times a day. So I can also click on this. So like this is going to look at the 12 hours from October 2nd at noon until midnight. So I'm going to click on that. And so basically all that we just did is take that same route ID, that same search, and it just limits the time frame to that 12 hours. And so we can see, like I can look at what do we have here? Actually, one better way to look at this, like if I want to see what all the route ID, the trip ID, and the stop ID. And so instead of seeing that huge block of data, now all that I'm seeing is the timestamp that the data was collected, the route ID, the trip ID, and the stop ID. The stop ID is this, if you've ever looked at the bus stop signs, especially back when you could text in a number, that's the number that it is. But I can also look at stop sequence, which is kind of a more, the number makes a little bit more sense. This is the number of stops since the route started. So we can see, 11:47 at night, 11:48, 11:50, 11:51, 11:52. We can see kind of as these buses are progressing. So we can see that there's probably multiple buses running this same route on different trips, which means that at 11:50 there was probably, so we have 779, 697. I'm just seeing those two numbers, so it looks like there was probably two silver buses running this same route on different trip IDs at night. So like at 11:48 we see that there was this one that hit 53 and 54, and this one that hit 40 and 41. And so the reason that a bus was able to hit two stops theoretically in the same time is because we only poll every, let me mute that, we only poll every 60 seconds. So like especially late at night, I imagine there wasn't a lot of people riding the bus, so the bus was probably just blowing through a lot of these stops. And so my system polls, it sees that the bus is about to hit, if it just hit stop 39, it's scheduled to hit 40 and on. So when we poll the next time, it probably saw that it had just hit 41 and then only 42 and on were scheduled. So that's why right here it looks like it hit 40 and 41 at the exact same time. there, if I pulled more than every 60 seconds, then we could get a little bit more granularity. But for what we're doing, it doesn't really matter. We can actually look at the actual arrival time, because this is the time that it was pulled. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's the time that the bus actually arrived. We can look at the actual arrival time. So we were just looking at this Silver Line bus hitting 40 and 41 at theoretically the same time, right? But if we look over here, the actual arrival time, and this is a measure. It's the number of seconds since 1970. It's a standard measure that computers use. We can see that the actual arrival time was 23 seconds difference. So this is the one that tells us more about when it actually got there. And that's the one that I use for things like figuring out OTP. So there's tons of data that you can look through on here. Every one of these fields over here on the side is searchable. So like we also have the actual arrival time day of week, and so that is the day of week using 0 through 6 as the number to represent it. So like we were looking at October 2nd. So 4, I believe, is Thursday. So if you look at that, 4 is Wednesday. Interesting. I wonder if that's a bug, actually, since it's so close to midnight. I'm kind of curious. Let me... There have been some edge cases, and like I already know that I don't properly take into account daylight savings time, and that is an issue that's on my list. So let's go back to 8 and let's see what this looks like really quick. Let's refresh. Yeah, I think that's a bug, because you can see that at 8 o'clock it says that the actual day of week is the arrival day of week is 3, which is what Wednesday is. You can actually see the bug right here, where at 7:59 all of a sudden it's starting to say that the day of week is 4. So that's a bug, and there's a few of them in here. So let's Suzu. Shh, you're okay. We just got cats, so Suzu is freaking out about the cats. So we can also use this to do visualizations. So, for example, the one that I've put out there a few times is this OTP, and so what that's using. So this is the OTP for October 2nd between noon and 8. So I can also just say, like, what is it for the last 30 days? And so this is using that actual arrival time, or there's the scheduled arrival time and then the actual arrival time. So let me actually show you that really quick. So I'm going to back over here. I'm going to remove the trip ID and the stop sequence and the stop ID and the date of week. So we now have the actual arrival time, and then I want to do the scheduled arrival time. So I believe if all these are 0, that probably means that these are canceled routes. So I'm going to remove the canceled routes by going to its schedule relationship, is, and so scheduled relationship is the one that can be either 0 for scheduled or 3 for canceled. So by doing 0, all right. So now I just got rid of all of the canceled ones. So we can see, for example, that one was exactly on time, whereas that one was it's scheduled for 8:94, and it actually arrived at 8:28, which means that it was what is that, 55 seconds early or so, 50 some seconds early. So that would be considered on time. Let's look for one that's a little bit further off. These are pretty good. This is all at like 5 in the morning. Let's look for one that's okay. So like here's one. So this is the scheduled arrival time. Let me double check that. Yeah, so that's scheduled versus actual. So scheduled arrival time is 4:92:717, and it actually came about 400 seconds later. So this would actually be considered late if we use the metric of 1 minute early to 5 minutes late, whereas it would count as on time for the 2 minutes early, 7 minutes late, because 973 to 717, that's 400, 460 or so. So 460 seconds late is it's just about at that 7 minute time frame. And so that's what we're using to do this visualization. So this is that visualization again, where we see -60 to 300. So any bus where the scheduled time, the difference between the scheduled time and the actual time is between 60 seconds and 300 seconds, it basically counts as on time. Anything that is -infinity to -61 is early, and anything 301 to infinity is late. So this is the 1 to 5 metric. I also have 2 to 7. And so using that same metric, you can see that the OTP is quite a bit better. And that's just looking at the last 30 days. But recently I started also collecting the cancellation. So we have OTP with cancellation. And so for example, we can see in the last 30 days, there was 3% canceled. I haven't verified these numbers with the MTA in any way, so as you saw, we just came across a bug. There's probably other ones. I just started doing the cancellation stuff on September 13th or 14th, I think. It would be interesting to see what that looks like, but basically, just like I was collecting each stop for a scheduled run or for a run that went through, I'm now also counting every canceled run. So when they cancel it, I generate all the stops and then mark them all as canceled. But that also works because sometimes the MTA will cancel a route and then uncancel it. So by doing it that way, an uncanceled route will not count against their cancellation numbers. So I think this should be pretty accurate. I'm not sure whether canceled runs count for the OTP or not. So let's let's find that out right now. So I'm going to do the scheduled relationship is 3. I'm not sure if this is going to tell us or not. So what this is telling me is that the OTP that I've been calculating has been counting canceled runs as on time, because we can see that there is 231,392 records that are considered between -60 and 300, which is on time. Fortunately, I haven't done any of that in anything I've released yet, because I haven't put anything out since they changed the cancellation metric. And before that, there was a minimal number of canceled routes per day. Probably just in the dozens, or less than 100. So that wouldn't really count anything, but that is something that I'll need to keep track of the next time I put anything out. So I can remove that filter by just clicking that little X right next to there, and we will get back to seeing that. Some of the other visualizations I have are like I looked at the bus bunching en route. And so it's saying no results found because I'm looking at just stop sequence 25 and headway of 0 to 120. The headway is basically looking at the actual arrival time of 2 buses on the same stop and calculating that. So we want that one, but we don't want that. And hit refresh. I don't know what's going on with this. But I can show you. Susie, you're interested? I can show you how to make a new visualization. Like I have, one that I used for one of my presentations was this segment speed. Why is it not showing anything? What am I doing wrong? Percentiles of speed. Well, let's just make a new one. So this is honestly, making visualizations is where I've struggled a bit more, just because I'm not very strong with Kibana, which is what this is. So for example, I can do a line graph. So like if those guys, the New York, University of New York or whatever it was, if they wanted to, not work so much on a lot of the back end stuff, but wanted to work more on some of this visualization stuff, there could be some real value here. So let's look at the speed. The speed of the Navy route, as it goes through its stuff. So I want the y-axis to be. Let's do percentiles for that, because you want to see like what's the median, what's the best case, what's the worst case. And so we're gonna do segment speed, and so by default it has all these. I usually throw away the top and bottom. I usually only keep 75, 50, and 25, but we can keep them all for now. And we can gotta freaking zoom in here right now. And then let's do a bucket. We're going to do our x-axis. I don't actually know what these do. As I said, I'm not super good at this yet. I think we want date range. And so you can just hit this plus up here, this play up here, and it'll show you what you have so far. And so I can see that it's trying to lump everything from October 7th to October 19th into the same bucket. So I did that wrong. Okay, so we want, oh, okay, so this date range is just going to have you actually set that. So I think what we want is range, and I want, no, it's not that, not date range, maybe date histogram. Yeah, here we go. So date histogram is going to use the timestamp, which, as I said, isn't the one that we really want, because that's when the data was collected, as opposed to what it actually said. That was that 24-second difference that we saw earlier, but it's good enough. Like you're talking, it's within 60 seconds. It's going to set its own interval, and so let's see what that looks like. Why isn't this showing? Let's look at the last 90 days. Why isn't it showing anything? You can see up here, there was some stuff going across. Well, that's not good. It appears that when I did the cancellation stuff, that I might have messed something up. There was some other code changes I made. This isn't a huge deal because I generate the speed, so I can go back and process it. But we can see across the entire system the average speed of the entire system. This is the 75% percentile, 25, 5th percentile, 95th. And so that's when we can start putting in some of these filters. So I can do, I want to do short name. Route short name is CityLink Navy. And so that's going to change this. Okay, so not a huge change, but slightly slower. I can also do direction ID, because you have, inbound, outbound. So I believe 0 is the one that's going towards Dundalk. It's usually okay. So like you can see these, and granted, this is showing all Navy routes, all stops. I can then narrow this down to like day of week, and so as we saw, there was a slight bug with that as you get to the end of the day. So let's say we want to see is between 1 or 0, which is Monday, to 5, which is Friday. All right. So, and actually all I did is just, it got rid of Saturday and Sunday there. It just doesn't really do that much. That was actually not that great of a filter. But like we could also make the x-axis be terms, and we could do by stop ID, and I think we want to set that size, but like, so this will show us for the last, not terms, because that's showing the stop ID. We want the stop sequence. Stop sequence. And so that's showing, I think we want, so that's only showing us 5. I think like if we put in 75 here, I think, yeah, there we go. So now it's showing showing 76 to 2. So if we change that to ascending instead. And so yeah, I think so this is showing. Not sure what's going on with those. That's interesting. This is there are definitely some bugs in the system, and it's just because I have only had a limited amount of time to really look at this. Some of the stuff is just bad data coming in. Some of it is that there's limited. I'm only pulling it every 60 seconds, so as I said, some of them can be off by up to 60 seconds. We're not talking about a huge difference. Except that is the speed. It's saying that it's going negative 60 miles an hour, which obviously isn't right. So there are some issues there. But yeah, so that's a quick rundown. We can sit down and play with it a little bit more, but the real power of this is this visualizations, and that's where my knowledge kind of breaks down a little bit. So yeah, let me know if you guys have any questions. I can also walk you through some of the stuff, but I hope this kind of helps, and I hope that you can use this. So have a good one.